In this short video, we're going to learn a little bit about Tinkercad by creating a keychain together. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and log into Tinkercad. As a teacher, you're going to click on Educators. If you're a student, then you'll go ahead and click on Student, or if your teacher gives you a class code, then use that appropriate button. But whether teacher or student in our district, you can just click Sign in with Google, and you'll be taken to your Tinkercad homepage. Teacher screens and student screens look slightly different. So this is what an educator screen is going to look like. The student screens are going to be a tiny bit different than this. But no matter what, educator or student, you're going to be looking for this blue create button with the plus sign on it. There's a couple places that might be, so I can find it here on my homepage. From your designs page, you also can click on create to get started. And we're going to be creating a 3D design. So we're going to be creating to send to the 3D printer. So one thing that I suggest my students do is to go down to the settings button down in the corner here. And we can actually change this preset here to our 3D printer. So we're using the Dremel 3D printers, the 4045. So I'm going to select that. That's going to change the size of my print bed in Tinkercad. And then I just close settings. And now we've got kind of the shape of our actual print bed. So we can just ensure that our design isn't going to go off the edge anywhere. The other thing we're going to look at here is that our grid currently is set to millimeters. So as we're creating our design today, all of our measurements are going to be in millimeters. All right, we're going to just use a few of the shapes tools. We're going to learn how to cut some holes, and we're going to learn how to group our items together today to create our keychain. So first up, I'm going to create, well, actually, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to name my project, especially if you are a student. You want to make sure you name your project clearly so that when you send it to whomever is going to run the 3D print, or when you export it onto the drive, a little USB drive to 3D print, that we know exactly which project is yours. So I'm going to call this my one word keychain sample lesson. If you're a student, or if you're sending this to the 3D printer, I would recommend you put maybe your first name in here or your initials or something that identifies it as yours. And then just click out, and that title is saved. So now I'm going to create a word for my keychain. I'm going to call this my one word keychain. So what's my one word that I'll want to use as inspiration for my year? So the way I do that is I'm going to just drag over this basic shape, the text shape, and I can click in this text box here to write the word that I want to create. There are a couple of different fonts. There's not many. There's 4 fonts here that I can choose from right now. I'm going to keep that. But I do have the option of editing my text here. I'll come back to that in just a minute. First thing we're going to do is we're going to work on our measurements. So as we are, I'm going to minimize this for a minute. As we're looking at our shape here, if I want to look at it from different angles, there's a couple ways I can do that. I can come up to the top left here of my screen, and I can click on the box here to change my view. So this can help me with making any movements or resizing or whatnot. The other thing you can do is you can, with 2 fingers, you can click and hold down and then drag your work plane around. And that's another way you can change your view. I'm going to come to this angle here for a minute because in order to resize our shape, I want to show you these white boxes here. When I hover over this white box, this is showing me the length and width of my design right now in millimeters. So right now this is about 113 millimeters or 11 centimeters long, and then 22 millimeters tall, or about 2 centimeters. So it's pretty small. Probably a good size for a keychain already. I might shrink this down just a little bit, and there's a couple ways I could do that. If I want to click and hold down on that white box, I can drag to resize. And if I don't like that, I can undo. The other thing I can do is if I click on that white box, it will hold the dimensions on screen, and then I can actually type in the dimensions. So maybe I want to make this more like 10 by, wrong way, undo, 100 millimeters by, let's try 20 centimeters. See what that looks like. So that looks okay still. The other thing that you can do, I'm going to change this view again. So these corner boxes down here, that let me adjust length and width. There is a white box up here on the top. This is going to be the height or the thickness of my shape. So I'm going to click on that. And right now, 10 millimeters, so 1 centimeter thick. So it's pretty small already. I'm going to leave the height as it is for now. Now, the other shape that you see up top here is this black triangle. This actually lets me raise my shape up or down off the work plane. We're going to use that in just a second. And then you also have these rotation tools here. So if you need to rotate any shapes, any of your shapes, you can use those tools to do so. Same, just click and hold and then drag it around. Now in our text editing box here, we had a couple things too. So you can see you can adjust the height in that box as well. You can also play with beveling and segments. So these are gonna play with the line shapes, how curved or not they are, that kind of thing. So you can see some things changing here. And I'm going to undo that and just keep my letters as they were. There we go. Now, as this is here, with the text box, the way the text box works, my letters have some separation between them. So if I were to 3D print this as it is, that means these letters are going to print separately. If I'm making a keychain, then I want the letters connected so that I'm making a connected keychain. A couple ways we can do that. We could have dragged over our text box and we could do one letter at a time. And then I can put those letters together as needed to make sure that I am creating one connected piece for the 3D printer. So that's one option. Or, this is the one we're going to do today, we're going to take another of our basic shapes here and just create like a backing for our letters. So we'll have this base shape here, and then we'll have our letters here. And we can choose to either punch the letters through or have them raised off of that backing. So I'm going to come back over here to my basic shapes menu. By the way, if you click on that menu there, that's where it says basic shapes, there's a drop down and there are a ton of already pre-installed shapes that you can use in projects. You can also search through other people's shapes that have been published to Tinkercad, and you can borrow those designs as well. But I'm just going to use this square here, and I'm going to change the color just for the purpose of seeing the different shapes separately. This is not going to impact what color we 3D print in. So we'll take that. Maybe I won't make it blue because it's kind of like the background. Okay, just so I can see these separate from each other really well. And then I'm going to adjust the size to fit the back of this. So we went with 100 by almost 22. So I want to make this slightly longer. Let's try 110 and make this slightly taller. So let's say 23. And then we do not want it to be this height. We want it to be on the back of our words a lot smaller. Let's try 5 millimeters. It's going to be pretty small, half a centimeter. That's okay. We'll try it and see. Okay. Now, I want to get these letters on top of my backing here, and let's see if that's about right. Looks like I'm going to want it to be a little taller. So I'm going to adjust that again. Let me get rid of this for a minute. 25 maybe. Let's try 30. That's nice. And then I like that length the way it is. Now, I want to get these two shapes centered pretty nicely. So what I'm going to do is select both shapes simultaneously. I can either hold down Shift while clicking to do that, or I can click and drag to select multiple shapes at once. And then up here at the top, there's this button here called Align. I'm going to turn that on. And now what I can do is use these dots here to align my shapes in different ways. So I want to center it this way, center it this way. There we go. All right, and we are almost done. At this point, we're going to decide if we want our letters punched through that base or if we want them raised. And then the last thing is we're going to add a little loop for our keychain hardware. So let's first look at the different options for our word here. If I leave it this way right now, this is going to give it that raised look when I print. Now I'm going to look underneath though, and yep, it's kind of cutting through the back a little. I could leave it that way, but I don't want it to cut through the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the height of my letters a bit, and then I'm going to move them up. Now let's see. There we go. So that looks good on the back, and there are my letters. So this is one option. The other option is maybe you want to punch the letters through, in which case on my text box here, I would actually change this from the color red to whole. And then I would want that height back. I'm going to want that to go all the way through my shape. So I'm going to move it down that way, and you see the letters go through there. Now the last thing I do to make that hole, to actually cut that hole, excuse me, is select those shapes together again, and then I use this group button up here. Now when I click away, you can see that now is a cutout. Now again, you don't have to cut out your letters. If you would rather create that raised effect instead, I can undo, undo, undo. I can leave it like this, and I can print this raised looking lettering instead. All right, now last part, we're gonna create a little ring connector here. I'm actually gonna turn my shape so that we are working on the lengthwise on my, hold Shift. There we go. Oh, undo. Shift. Let go. There we go. Okay. Now, here we are, still on our print bed. I'm going to use a cylinder to create our ring for our keychain. So first is to make sure that's connected. And let's check the size of this. So our keychain hardware is about 3 millimeters in diameter. So we just need to be able to fit that 3 millimeter diameter ring through there. This currently is 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. Let's make this ring bigger. I'm gonna go 50 by 50. And then we'll move that over here. That's gonna be really big. Too big. So let's try that again. All right. And I'm gonna shrink this down to, let's match this one. So how tall did we do that? 5. So let's match this. Oops. And I'm gonna move this out of the way. There we go. Okay. 330. Now I can center these again. So I'm gonna like this and center. Make this smaller. All right. And center again. Oh, pretty well centered, huh? Okay. This is going to need to be bigger. All right, we can keep playing with that to get that nicely centered. I'm going to select all again and get all those pieces aligned. There we go. But I'll show you how to do the cutout. So there's a couple ways you could do that. You could drag over the whole tool to cut. You could duplicate the cylinder you already have, and you could then readjust the size. I'll go ahead and drag out a hole cutting tool, and we want this to be slightly smaller. So let's make 20 by 20 is pretty good. I'm going to drag it here to my cylinder, and I'm going to select both of these cylinder shapes together and then group them. Got that pretty nicely centered there. Now we're going to move that down to make sure it's cutting all the way through, and then group those together to cut that hole out. So that looks something like that now. That does not look centered. Undo. I'm going to try and see if I can fix that. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, I'll try again. Group, and now we have a hole cut out. So that is looking pretty good. So we have 30 by 30, that's pretty big still. And this one, 11 centimeters by 3 centimeters. So you can now at this point adjust the size of your shapes. You could select the whole thing and change the size here. So right now we're coming out at 13.9 centimeters, almost 14 centimeters. So it's gotten kind of big. I might shrink that down a bit. Oops, wrong way again. Undo. Okay. Make this 100 by 20. Let's see what that looks like. Play with your sizes a little bit. When you're ready, what you're going to do is you're going to group the entire shape together. Okay. And then you'll be ready to send this to the 3D printer. And the way that we're going to do that, I'm going to ungroup this real quick here. So ungroup, undo. And it's really bugging me that I got this size kind of wrong here. So I'm going to fix that, which means I'm going to have to ungroup. So if you need to ungroup some shapes to adjust them, there it is. All right. So currently 13 millimeters. Oh, that's why, because I was thinking back and forth in centimeters and millimeters. The diameter of my hardware is only 3 millimeters. So I'm going to go 5 by 5. And I'm going to make this quite a bit smaller. Let's see if we could do something like that. And I'm going to center that. I'm going to get a little bit bigger. Let's try that. I like that better. And then this cylinder, I'm going to make there's my dots. Let's make that 10 by 10 and we'll try that. Let's see how that looks. Okay, we'll align those, center, center. Okay. And we'll align these centered. Okay, let's see how that looks. Ready to group. That'll cut my hole. Let's try to connect that now again. All right, and then I'm gonna one more time just check my centering. Alignment. I think I'm happier with that. Okay, so if I group these together, now we're at a length about 9 centimeters by 2. I think that's a good looking keychain. So I will now export for 3D print, and we're going to use .stl. Once you download that file into your files folder, then you need to either attach it to an email or put it on a USB stick to get it to whoever can 3D print that file for you.